I want to talk about something that I've learned in my life that I didn't really understand when I was younger, right? And I really understand now, you know, in my early 30s. There's a big difference in my experience between rejection and heartbreak. And I've done videos on this really old Speakdoms. In fact, I think the really old ones are over on my first channel, Geekdom 101. There is a playlist there where you can find the old Speakdoms, but I've moved them over to this channel because World of Geekdom is the more personal channel. Now, obviously, the old ones are still there on the old channel, so I haven't like moved them, actually moved the videos over, just the series. So, you know, all the newer Speakdoms are over here. But I want to address like the difference between rejection and heartbreak. I don't think I really understood what heartbreak was until later in life. And I'm talking about just myself now. Obviously, everybody's different. Sometimes you experience it very late in life. Sometimes you experience it when you're very young. But when you're very young, you tend to be more resilient and you tend to just get over things faster, in my experience. You know, like when you're a kid, it's kind of funny. When you're a kid and, you know, you get hurt, like let's say you cut yourself. After a little while, you just don't care anymore. You might cry, but it just goes away. But when you're an adult and you're working and things like that, that cut might get to you, especially if you have like a cut on your hand and you use your hands for your job. Now, obviously, that's an example. That's a metaphor for what I'm talking about here, except that the cut would be like in your heart. So when it comes to rejection, when you ask somebody out or you have feelings for somebody or you have a crush on them and they reject you, it hurts. But it doesn't hurt in the way that you think it does. I think a lot of us confuse heartbreak with rejection. Now, both of them are, quote, heartbreaking things, and they both give us the same feeling of emptiness. And you have to understand that both of them have similarities, but there's a couple of big differences. So when it comes to rejection, a lot of that is ego-based. When you talk to somebody, and again, this goes for all genders, and you are very attracted to them, and what happens is you build up this fantasy in your head of, you know, being with them, doing things with them, sexual and not, and then they reject you. It ends up hurting your ego first and foremost. Even though people don't understand this, they don't really understand what ego is. I hear the word ego thrown around the internet so much and nobody has a damn clue what they're talking about. It's like when they talk about canon and Dragon Ball, they don't have a clue. When it comes to ego, right, that's our defense mechanism. It protects us from being hurt. So when we are hurt, the ego takes the blow so that we don't totally destroy each other. But of course, that affects our brain and our heart. So when somebody rejects you, you have this feeling of, you know, damn, I'm not going to get to be with them, but why? Like, why did they reject me? Is it something I did? Is it my breath, the way I look, my attitude? Could I have been this way? Could I have been that way? You know, that is true rejection and it hurts, right? But at the end of the day, if you get rejected, you never really got to experience time with that person in the way you wanted, right? So you haven't had time for your brain to adjust into being into that relationship. There's these things called schemas. This is all psychology, where whenever we meet a new person or do a new thing, your brain develops a schema, a pattern around that person. And if you really pay attention to, and this goes for all of you, everyone listening, your friendships and relationships, you'll pick up on this if you really think about it, have self-awareness, where you first meet somebody, you learn more about them. Again, friend or girlfriend, boyfriend, doesn't matter. And you build up more of like this tangled web of facts, inside jokes, all these different things. So obviously, you know, when you get rejected by somebody who's your friend, it hurts even more, right? If you get rejected by some girl at the club, most guys are going to be like, whatever. It might hurt their ego. It might bruise their ego. They're going to move on to the next one. But if it's a girl that you really like, and I'm saying girl because I'm a guy, right? I'm a heterosexual male. It applies to anybody. It applies to girls, trans people, gays. It's all the same, right? And you get rejected by somebody who you've been friends with and you had developed feelings for, it does hurt more, right? But it's still kind of rejection because it's different when you're dating somebody than when you're, you know, just being friends with them. Because when you're dating somebody, there's sex involved. And sex is a very emotional thing, right? For men and women, it's a very emotional thing. Obviously, we can have sex and have it not be emotional. But a lot of times, if you care about the person, you love them, it's gonna be emotional. It's a much stronger thing. And there's also cohabitation. You might live with the person, or you might be roommates. There's different factors. Now, the difference, I think, in my experience, between rejection and heartbreak is when you put years into a relationship and it fails. And I mean an actual relationship. And it's the worst feeling. It's much worse than rejection. If you're out there and you've never felt heartbreak, and a lot of you haven't, and I'm glad you haven't, but at some point you probably will. Hopefully not. Knock on wood. I knocked on my desk there. But it's a different feeling, and I'll tell you why. Because they both have similar properties, first of all. You create this fantasy of the future. You're with this person for X number of years. You dream about the marriage, the kids, the picket fence, the house, all that stuff, right? And then shit goes sour. And usually in long-term relationships, when things go sour, a lot of times for men, mostly, you don't pick up on the warning signs. Things don't just drop off magically. There are slow declines. And the older you get, the more you spot these things. And the problem is that when we're younger and we see the cracks in the foundation, we tend to ignore them. Because, whatever, we're busy with work. She would never leave me. She loves me. That's what you think. And I'm not saying she doesn't love you, but love can fade sometimes. And on both sides, doesn't matter. But the point is that the difference is that when you go through a breakup from a long-term relationship, the reason why the heartbreak is magnified is because your schema with that person has been built up for so many years. You've developed a pattern of being with them, waking up in the morning, seeing them. They're part of your life every single day. And even if you stay friends with them afterward, it's not the same. It's not the same. That physical interaction, that physical attraction, their eyes, their lips, it's different. And then when you see them with somebody else, it hurts. Not because you're selfish. If you ever had like an ex break up with you and you see her with a different guy or whatever, and you're mad about it, don't beat yourself up. That's a very normal human reaction. Because that was yours, man. She was yours. And you see her with somebody else. And it hurts. It's very, very painful. It's different than being rejected. Because when you're rejected, you never really got to experience those feelings. Now you experience them and it's been taken away from you. It's like if you are a millionaire and you go bankrupt. That's a completely different kind of pain than if you were never a millionaire at all. See what I'm saying? I've never gone bankrupt and I've never been a millionaire. But I'm just saying, I can imagine. I have been homeless before. I've talked about that. It's a similar feeling. The main thing is also guilt. Because if you break up with someone and you have self-awareness and you have self-reflection, you might end up feeling guilty as well. And you might start wondering, man, what if I had done this? What if I had treated her better this day? What if I had not yelled at her? What if I had not, done this, done that? We all make mistakes. That's a fact. And then you start thinking about these mistakes and then you end up putting yourself in this pattern where, and this is all part of the grieving process, where you start thinking about the past. What it becomes a big what if scenario. Masako X could do a million videos on this type of, right? What if I had not done this part 17? You know what I'm saying? If you know Masako X's content, you know what I'm talking about. And you know what I'm saying? You feel different, a different kind of pain because they're not in your life anymore. And this same thing happens when somebody dies. People have said in the past that there's a very similar feeling between death and true heartbreak, like divorce or a long-term relationship breakup. They're very similar, very, very similar. The only difference is this: in some ways, the breakup might hurt more. And you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute, how does that make any sense? If let's pretend that your I don't know, your brother dies, and then you go through a divorce. How can the divorce hurt more? Because at least with your brother being dead, and I'm not talking about myself here. I'm just using it as an example. And even though my brother did die, when your brother's dead or your sister or whatever, I don't even have a sister, they're at least in peace. You at least know that they're not in pain anymore. They're not suffering. They're in peace. Whether you believe in the afterlife or not, they are definitely not in pain. The lights are out. When it comes to a breakup, though, you're thinking about that person. Are they okay? Am I going to be okay? Should we try again? Those are all the feelings you get. A lot, and they change every minute. It's crazy. You know, it's a very different thing. And then you mourn not so much them not being in your life, but also the collapse of the relationship in a social situation. You used to have mutual friends. Typically with couples, right? And again, want to reiterate, gay couples, trans, straight, it doesn't matter. Lesbian, doesn't matter. It all applies. You have other couples that you hang out with. When that breakup happens, you can't even do that anymore without it feeling awkward or it feeling different. And most of the time you don't. So it affects your friendships. Plus, if they had a family, you've lost that family because typically a lot of times that family won't just stay your friends. Again, everything's different. So it's a separation. And when you've never been with the person, you never got to experience these things. You never got to know their family, their friends, and have all these memories, years of memories. You get rejected. Oh man, she doesn't like me. Most people who are grown up in their 30s, they can get over rejection pretty quickly because you've already been rejected a bunch of times in your life. You're used to it by now. I don't want to say you have baggage, but you're used to it by now. But when you're with somebody for a long time, it's a much stronger feeling of pain, dude. It's way, way stronger. And I want to just make this video to kind of talk to people out there and say, number one, it's okay to grieve. Number two, it's okay to cry. I might do a whole video about that, actually. The whole grieving and crying thing. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's a big difference. Huge difference. And when you get rejected, you might think you got your heart broken. You think that's heartbreak. Buddy, that's level 1. Try being with somebody for an X number of years and it doesn't work out. And again, another thing I want to talk about, it doesn't work out. We're not even talking about the blame game here. Could be their fault, could be your fault. It's probably both of your faults. Now, obviously, when a breakup happens due to infidelity, cheating, that's a whole other animal because that really hurts your ego. Especially if you're a woman. Now, when I say especially if you're a woman, understand this is not a gender thing that I'm talking about here. It's been proven scientifically that because of the parental investment theory, this is not me, because SJWs tend to take this shit the wrong way every time we talk about this, but this is an actual scientific fact. So if you want to fight against science, be my guest, but I trust science on this one. And I trust my experiences in life. It's been scientifically proven through parental investment theory. Parental investment theory, look it up, that when a woman gets cheated on, especially if there's children involved, it magnifies the pain. Because that man was supposed to be there to help you raise those kids. Obviously, it's the same thing with men too, but with women, because they have to incubate for 9 months, the evolutionary psychology of women tends to hurt more because they're emotionally driven creatures. That's not a chauvinistic thing to say. That's scientifically proven. So it hurts even more when that kind of stuff happens. In fact, I've heard stories. I've never experienced this before. But I have a lot of friends where some people say that if your spouse cheats on you, it hurts more than if they die. Like if your spouse gets hit by a train and dies, it's tragic as hell and it's going to hurt for a long time. But in some ways, cheating is like a betrayal. See what I'm saying? So it makes it worse. And you never get to experience that if you just got rejected. It's not the same thing. It's not the same. It's very similar. It's sad, but it is not the same thing. So I wanted to just put that out there because I've been talking to a lot of my friends about this, and it's something that I think is a topic that I think people will probably understand and gravitate to. And of course, like I always say, if you have a bad day, it'll get better. But if you're going through heartbreak or rejection, it might not happen the next day. That might take a little bit of time to get over. You see what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with that. I love you. Thank you for watching, listening, whatever. I really do. Without you, there would be no me. And I'll see you later.